Previously on M.V.P.Knight talking about the Santa Clauses. Someone's gonna fire that, right? You can't show Chekhov's gun and then not fire Chekhov's gun. That's not how this works.
I'm gonna ask you to help me deliver the eggs.
Are you sure you want someone whose sanity is so deteriorated to go into everybody's houses? He could plant bombs everywhere. He's got nothing left to lose. His girlfriend left him. His career is in a shambles. His dad just pushes him more into that career, which he hates, which got him to lose his girlfriend. His sister is practicing the dark arts, except she's not practicing the dark arts anymore, which makes her both a heretic and useless. And his mom gives all her attention to his sister.
It actually brought my dad and I back together.
No one knows your dad, Chris.
Well, at least I know my dad.
I can go get you some ice.
Have we ever really checked her credentials?
We asked her about that. It went like this.
First of all, I'll have to see your credentials. Listen, tell me something, Professor. Have you had any experience?
What if I told you that Cal has been a secret mastermind, controlling both sides of this conflict without either side knowing? Now, Cal just has to sleep while his enemies kill each other. When one Santa uses their powers against another Santa, it's debilitating for both parties. So it stands to reason that if one Santa kills another Santa, they both die. The season finale is upon us. It's been a mixed bag of a season, I think. For every joke that lands, there's one that doesn't. Magnus Antis' role as the villain of this season hasn't really been working because he's been so separated from the other characters. They introduced him to be the villain, but it almost feels like watching a different show whenever they cuts to Magnus Antis. And I don't mean because the tone is different or anything, I mean because it's telling what feels like an entirely separate, unrelated story, which clashes with what you want him to be because they told you to expect him to be the antagonist to Scott Calvin, but he never really fulfilled that. But I do like how Scott and his family have been going through things that are legendary versions of stuff real families go through. Sandra was afraid to tell her parents something about herself, and once she did, the mom started worrying that Sandra was going somewhere she couldn't follow. Scott wanted Cal to follow in his footsteps, but Cal wasn't sure if he wanted to do that or not. And Scott and Carol get to take turns having a head on their shoulders while the other is doing something irrational.
What should I do here?
Why are you asking her?
Oh, yeah. I forgot you're back.
I don't want you talking to her anymore.
She means nothing to me. Sorry, Paper Honey Buns.
I would like to know if he always viewed Betty and Paper Betty as separate entities. Because if he did, that would mean he's been using Paper Betty as his mistress this whole time. Or maybe he does view Betty and Paper Betty as the same entity and thinks that if Betty is upset with Paper Betty, she just doesn't know what's good for her other self. Maybe that's what Noel thinks. But I love how he's gotten so deep into that delusion that he forgot he's not supposed to need it anymore. And then when reality comes knocking, he still holds true to that illusion.
You're still officially the head elf. You have to decide what to do.
But I'll biff it.
And how am I supposed to do this without paper honey buns?
Then why can't I see Santa right now?
We're gonna have a conversation later about how you communicate when you're stressed.
Okay, but if that conversation happens, he's gonna have a few things to say about you too.
I was worried we might go another 30 seconds without Hugo mentioning he went to MIT.
They want another fight? They got one.
Right, I'm sure that plenty of people asked for guns for Christmas, so they'll just have to go to that department of their factory, get all the guns, and then it'll take about 5 seconds.
Oh, Santa Blaster didn't make it.
Oh.
You can't introduce Chekhov's gun and then not fire it.
They just turned him into a nutcracker.
The last person they turned into a nutcracker was stuck in there for 700 years.
Yeah, and all it took to change him back was a little bit of magic from a snow globe.
They want a war, let's give it to them. I'm more of a numbers elf.
When I said we're gonna give him a fight, did I say unless you're a little girly man? I did not. So get your 4 eyes to the gun factory this instant, before I start choosing the targets for our practice.
I want you to take the elves to a safe place away from here.
Or you could just back out of giving them a fight.
Let's summon the gnomes.
The gnomes haven't been dead? You mean they've been there this whole time? Well, then why didn't they invade in the season 1 while the elves were at their weakest? Why didn't they invade at any time now that most of the elves are not capable of battle because they're numbers elves?
Sandra!
Freeze spell!
It's my family, it's not Mad Santa.
She just says freeze spell an entire group stand still. That's too overpowered. This is the only proper fight in the whole season, by the way.
We're here to support you.
I've waited 700 years for this.
Not you. You.
No. You made peace with filthy Xenos?
Let us lay down our arms for the spirit of good that you represent.
They're all looking around at each other like, do we represent good? Is that what we do? I guess we could represent good.
Is that mug your all-powerful doodad? I've been drinking out of that thing for years.
Why can't you be more like the mug, Santa Blaster? Using magic to push someone against a wall should be outlawed. It negates fighting choreography, and the only way to overcome it is with massive amounts of plot armor. The worst thing is when they pin someone against the wall with their telekinetic powers or whatever, and then they just start monologuing until something can rescue the good guy.
Have you ever even tried to make a toy?
Of course. But each time we do, instead of building something just for fun, we end up making something useful.
Doesn't anyone ask for useful stuff for Christmas?
You not only failed humanity as Santa, but you failed your son.
And because of your failure, you got Cal to bring Magnus Antis to the North Pole to kill you.
What's going on? And why? Why do you care?
And why aren't you attacking while they coordinate? First we get telekinesis throwing someone against a wall, and then we get a beam clash. You fool, you had one job. He had to grab the mug even though it interferes with his master plan. It would have looked bad if he didn't. But all's not lost, he can still get Scott to kill Magnus Antis, and because the magic of Santa against Santa is debilitating for both parties, this could still work out for him.
Turning you into a nutcracker. I don't think that's what you need.
No, I think what he needs is a bullet to the head. You brought the guns, right, Noel?
Riley.
Fluffy.
I knew you'd regret it in the morning. Hey, she finally got the dress code. Well, close enough to it, at least.
I was worried I'd never see you again.
Your dad did make a pretty compelling case.
He pulls her aside and whispers, "You didn't tell him that the breakup was a sham, did you?"
In the real world, with his girlfriend, going to college,
College?
so that he can make an informed decision should he decide to become the next Santa Claus.
I'm not exactly sure, but I think he's talking about you.
They are made for each other.
Yeah, she even plays dumb as part of the master plan, just like Cal. At the end of season 1, I was saying that they didn't really address the fact that the kids still need human interaction. I guess he finally figured that out.
This is why we need to separate. We encourage the most toxic elements of each other's personalities.
I am going to miss despising you.
I don't know whether to make a ceasefire joke or a divorce joke. Both? Both is good. Here's the ceasefire joke. Aren't you supposed to lay down your arms after a few casualties have happened? Nobody died this whole time. And now the divorce joke. If they take this to court, I hope we're not going to find out that she lied about her age on the marriage papers.
I transformed the Easter Bunny back to his normal self.
Finally.
How did he take it? Not great.
Well, that's fair.
I did learn some new words, though.
Oh, good. Now that she needs to talk to both animals and gnomes and witches, she's gonna have plenty of people to use those new words on.
Hey,
Is everything okay, Betty?
I'm afraid not.
Please tell me that Noel's not leaving you for Paper Betty.
My emergency breach of protocol has expired, so I need to return to Cribble Crabble immediately.
Oh, thank goodness. Well, don't worry about Noel, Betty. He'll still have Paper Betty while you're gone.
Head elves must be held to the highest standard of behavior.
We used to say that was the only thing separating us from the gnomes, but we're friends now.
Wait, the gnomes are the friends now. We've spent so much time hating the filthy Xenos that it's become a part of who we are, and without that, what does that say of the rest of our identity? Do we have to throw it all out? Who are we if we're not the ones who hate the Xenos? For centuries we've been united with us against them because we always had them. We looked at each other and knew that we were the same, and we were different from the filth. But without the filth, how do we look at each other and classify ourselves as us? As ironic as it sounds, that division kept us united throughout the centuries. Are we even capable of loving all those around us if we have no other party to direct all our hate towards?
But we're friends now, so it's the only thing separating us from the trolls.
Trolls.
Oh, thank goodness we still have someone to hate. All of us, the humans, elves, and gnomes, will suffer not the trolls to live.
maybe this is time for you to take that long overdue honeymoon.
Does Paper Honey Bunch get to come with him?
Curtis went to Cribble Crabble, never came back. Neither did Bernard.
That's not what you said earlier. They implied that Curtis exploded. Are they backing out of that? Oh, perhaps when he says Curtis never came back, what he means is Curtis went to Cribble Crabble and got so stressed out in the human world that he exploded. Hence, they named Curtis-itis after him, and they get to say that he never came back from Cribble Crabble. It's the only explanation that makes sense. I think what's going on here is they're communicating to us Curtis and Bernard became too old to play elves, and these two are about to become too old to play elves. The problem would be they'd have to explain how Betty and Noel are aging at a human rate. As a viewer, I could just say I'll overlook the fact that they look a year older even though they shouldn't, because it would keep these actors around. This franchise somehow has pretty good child acting, which is a rarity.
Merry Christmas, honey buns.
They're gonna get asked every single day where their parents are, for centuries perhaps.
And Merry Christmas to you.
And Merry Christmas to you. The problem with this episode is very obvious. If they didn't want to have their bloodshed with epic battles, they shouldn't have told me that there would be epic battles and bloodshed. Now should they? I think that the ending of this season is a more acceptable status quo than the one that season 1 ended up with. As heretical as it is, Sandra has found something that makes her happy, and Cal gets to go off to be a human and maybe be Santa Claus if he decides to later. Which is a good thing. I don't want Scott Calvin to actually be replaced in this series. If they want to do a Santa Claus series or movie with someone other than Scott Calvin, they should just make something completely unrelated and say it's a different take on Santa. And if Scott Calvin actually ever does permanently retire on screen, then that's gotta be the end of the series, as in nothing happens beyond this point. If they do make a season 3, I think they need to learn from their mistakes with Magnus Antis. Magnus Antis wasn't really a suitable replacement for Simon from the first season because Simon kept making his effects on the North Pole and on the protagonists. They made the mistake of telling you that he would be a combatant only for him to be changed by the power of friendship or whatever that was. There's even a part where Scott says he needs to change for battle, but then they don't actually have a real battle. I understand that not every director or actor is capable of complex fight choreography, But if they're not going to do that, then they shouldn't set up those expectations. In the first season, Simon wasn't a combatant, but that was okay because they never set him up to be a combatant. I think what happened with season 2 was they wanted a final boss who they could have carry their own subplots throughout the whole season, but they didn't want to have chaos happening at the North Pole getting in the way of the other family drama. My recommendation for season 3, if they want to do a villain who provides the last-minute conflict but doesn't keep things distracted from the family drama during the earlier episodes, would be have a character start out as not the villain but then shift to becoming the villain by the end of the season. That way the villain could be involved in the personal drama instead of being a separate thing that feels like an entirely different show. Now that Scott has done so much support for Cal's relationship with Riley, he might decide to call off the Civil War. Or maybe he's secretly frustrated that Magnus Antis failed, and he'll cook up some other master plan in season 3. So remember to like, comment, subscribe, ring the bell, and have a Merry Christmas.